True TV, because we documented the threat fusion centers, the FEMA camps, the spy grids, the Enda Posse Comitatus. They had a former FBI agent in there blowing the whistle, now works for the ACLU, Mr. German. It was the most credible of all the episodes they've had. And, you know, because they're all serious subjects, but some of it's kind of entertainment-wise, because that's how they allowed it on TV. This thing was so hardcore because I basically, you know, did the research for about 70% of it, and, of course, was in it, that it got taken off television and erased off DVRs. So now we have on the Homeland Security website the original contract from May, thanks to a listener pointing it out to us yesterday, where they put out the contracts to have a general contractor, and Halliburton got it. And it's all there, all the subcontractors, everything. It's all right there. And it's a new article, and it needs to get out to everybody. It's Homeland Security moves to man FEMA camps. On December 6th, we reported on a document originating from the Halliburton subsidiary, KBR, describing services KBR is looking to farm out the subcontractors. The document was passed on to us by a state government employee, complete with phone numbers and everything. Our research has since discovered another document that further reveals the ongoing effort by the government to establish FEMA camps. They've built them. Now they're moving to have people who are paid to be on standby to man them. First time we've ever seen this happening. And you saw DHS announce last Friday. We wrote an article about that. Preparing for massive influx of a collapse of Mexico. Get emergency camps ready. So they're getting ready for really total economic collapse is the point. And this article goes over all of this. So there should be a debate about this, but they don't want you to know about it. So that article's at Infowars.com. Here's some of the other stuff we've got, and we're going to our guest. Regulators seek ban of cell use in cars, even hands-free. Wall Street Journal. I mentioned this last week. This is from December 14th. And I see emails saying this can't be true. Yes, the feds want to ban using hands-free, which is totally safe, to talk in your car. Next, I guess they're saying you can't talk in your car. And more frightening, the feds are saying they want to track you in real time via your cell phone to make sure you're not talking on it. So it's just an excuse at prior restraint to surveil you. So regulators seek ban on use in cars of even hands-free. And then we've got some other reports here. They're not trying to say Iran carried out 9/11, and they had a federal judge say so. But never any discussion of Saudi Arabia, where 15 of the 19 so-called hijackers came from, our gallant little ally. Now, we're going to go to our guest in a moment. I just want to add here that this broadcast is listener-supported, but that's a side issue. When I see a film like A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995, with myself in it, but more importantly, Jane Graham, survivor of the attack, Hoppy Heidelberg, Cop of the Year, Terrence Yakee's mother, and so many others, the inventor of the neutron bomb, saying that there were clearly bombs inside. General Benton K. Parton, former head of Air Force Weapons Development, Brigadier General, saying the same thing since day one. It's all there. The first and only professional and current film. There's been some made at the time that were great and got the word out, that had good information. I spent 40 minutes in Road to Tyranny, a 3-hour film on it. It's good. It was the best work till that date. This is really a masterpiece, and it's available at Infowars.com. You support the filmmakers and our outfit. When you do that, A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995, show it to your pastor. Give it to police officers. Give it to your sheriff. When I was in the SWAT team headquarters in Travis County about 10 years ago, they came in during citizens communications, kind of threatened me. I threatened to sue them. It became a big article in the newspaper. They apologized and invited me over to the SWAT team headquarters across the street from the county commissioners. And when I walked in there, I saw Waco, the Rules of Engagement, that shows the flare footage of the feds killing the people. And I saw Oklahoma City documentaries exposing it. So, and they were like, look, we just told to go over there. We're good guys. And then later the lieutenant told me he was a patriot, and they found out about that and fired him. Lieutenant Beck was his name. But all of that happened. And so I'm just telling you, this stuff has an effect. You show this to police, they're going to wake up, because this was a big false flag, the prototype of 9/11. So A Noble Lie, available at Infowars.com right now. We also are going to continue it throughout the year. You can get 18 films to wake people up. All of my films: Obama Deception, Fall of the Republic, Endgame, Terror Storm, Truth Rising, the Police State Trilogy, the Bohemian Grove films, for $99.95, 70+% off. Again, Infowars.com to order, or call 888-253-3139. Give the gift of truth. this holiday season, this Christmas, and in the new year. Again, Infowars.com, or see all the films and more right now online if you're a Prisonplanet.tv member. We also simulcast the daily radio show for Prisonplanet.tv viewers, again, at Prisonplanet.tv, and the nightly news, 7 o'clock every evening. And speaking of the nightly news tonight, it's going to be a special one. We're going to have Hoppy Heidelberg back on. Aaron Dyke's going to host tonight's show. And we're also going to have a professor from Japan on some interesting subjects. I'll just leave it at that, so you'll want to stay with us this evening, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. Okay, now for the next hour, going to our guest, Hoppy Heidelberg, who, of course, was instrumental in, at first, really exposing that a cover-up was going on. And he is also joined there by one of the producers, Chris Emery, who we had on last week. And it's great to have Hoppy Heidelberg back with us. He's been on 4 or 5 times in the last 16 years that I've been on air, and he's been through so much, to tell the truth. But I want to get different people on: survivors, grand jurors, police officers, mothers. We actually have a police officer who's actually been threatened. We may be able to get on, one of the ones they didn't kill, just to illustrate for the people that were there what really happened and how this was blamed on the anti-globalist movement and the states' rights movement. And then, of course, there's all the White House memos and things saying they sure need another one. It would sure be great. There was a new Oklahoma City. Very nasty how dumb they think we are to publicly talk about this. So he was the grand jury foreman, and he investigated evidence surrounding the Oklahoma City bombing. And then, of course, we have Mr. Emery with him as well, joining us. Gentlemen, I could ask a lot of questions here, but I want to welcome you both back. And until we go to break in 10 minutes, instead of me just throwing out the first questions, you guys start talking about whatever you think is most important.
Alex, the first thing I want to do is make a correction there. I was not the foreman of the grand jury. If I had been, it would have been a completely different outcome.
Well, see, I'm going back from a decade plus, so some of my memory gets foggy. I apologize.
No problem. I just want to make that clear. That because they kept bringing that up. Well, you're not the foreman. You can't demand this and you can't demand that.
Maybe that's where I got it in my brain. But
yeah.
How long has it been since we talked? Something like 5, 6, 7 years?
Oh, at least, yeah.
Okay, so Hoppy was on the grand jury. Please continue.
Well, they handed us, when they called us back in December of 94 to come in, and then they excused the people who couldn't serve, and then they drew out of the hat the names of the people that were going to serve. And then they gave us a handbook called the Grand Juror's Handbook. And I took mine home, and I went through it first, highlighting it, and then I came back and underlined with red the most salient highlighted parts. And I understood that thing. I could have taken a quiz on it and made 100. I understood that book. And I didn't realize that they hadn't read the book and didn't understand it and were not going to go by it at all. So the first day that, of course, I'd been on the grand jury since January 95, but the other grand jury, there's 2 sitting grand juries all the time at Oklahoma City. There's one that serves from January to January and one from July to July. Well, the July jury wasn't going to have time to do this, so we caught it, and we started, I don't remember what it was, May or June, but anyway, the very first day that we started hearing evidence, I call it that, on the bombing, they told us that we couldn't question witnesses. Well, that's crazy. I mean, that's the whole purpose of a grand jury hearing like that, is for grand jurors to be able to question witnesses. So I showed them in the book that I could question witnesses and that I planned to. And finally, we came to a compromise. We just had to call it off for a while, and they came to a compromise, said, okay, you can question, and I was the only one that was allowed to question. You can question, but you have to submit your questions in advance. Well, of course, that was bull. The book didn't say that. But I was smart enough to know that that's not really a big deal. I'll submit one question, and then based on the answer to that question, I'll come with the rest of the questions I have. So I got around the one question rule, and I got around the giving them in advance the question rule. The biggest problem was there wasn't any these people that they brought in to testify knew nothing. There was no questions really to ask of them. They would testify that they saw Tim McVeigh at a gun show 5 years ago. Well, big deal. That was not relevant at all to Oklahoma City. In fact, none of the testimony that I heard in that grand jury room was relevant to Oklahoma City. It was all about stuff that happened months and years before. And it was just a dog and pony show. And I finally complained to them. I said, look, you're not bringing any witnesses in here to know anything. Here's the witnesses that I want. They said, okay, when we get through, you give us your list of witnesses and we'll call them. And I believed them, which was not very smart. I should have known better. So when they were through with their witnesses, they brought in the bill for us to sign. And I never got to call any of my witnesses. So that's when I wrote the judge a letter and told him what had happened. I said, they promised me I could call witnesses. They didn't allow it. Here's a list of witnesses that needed to be called, and I want you to make this happen. Well, again, I wasn't completely aware just how high this thing went, but there wasn't any way I was going to get a federal judge to back me on this. I realize now. And so it took them about 2 or 3 weeks to decide what to do about my letter. And then they decided they just couldn't grant me my wish to call in actual witnesses, because I could have proven right away that a truck bomb is not possible for a truck bomb to blow up that building.
Yeah, they couldn't let you bring in Jane Graham, who saw government agents planning bombs and thought they were telephone repairmen. I mean, you couldn't call the former head of Air Force Weapons Development. You couldn't call Terrence Yagey, the police officer that saw it all. I mean, you couldn't call for actual witnesses. They wanted you to just talk to random people that fit into their anti-patriot, anti-right-wing propaganda system.
Well, that's right, and that's why they finally decided that the judge just needed to fire me, so he just wrote me a letter and said, your services are no longer needed, and if you don't keep your mouth shut, you're going to prison. And each outburst will be a separate event, and you will have to serve your prison terms in order, one after the other, not at the same time. So it was kind of a joke. And as soon as I got the letter out of the mailbox from the judge, I faxed it to Channel 4, K4, the TV station here, and that just blew the lid off of everything.
I mean, that's tyranny with a capital T when they say, we'll throw you in irons if you ask any questions.
That's exactly right. And, of course, later on it got even worse. They got even, more threatening. But the judge, all he could threaten to do was just to put me in jail.
Now, tell us about the other threats, the FBI visit, all of it.
Well, the FBI came down a couple of times, may have been 3, I don't know. But I remember 2 occasions they came down. And the one occasion that was the funniest is I was sitting, my desk is in a bay window right there in front of the house. So as they pull up and stop, and you know who it is because the car they're driving is obvious motor pool. And so when these guys get out, the guy on my side, the passenger side that got out, took his pistol out of his holster, his shoulder holster, and stuck it in the waistband of his pants, and then buttoned his suit jacket over the pistol. So I watched all that with interest. And so they came in, and of course he was the bad guy. They do this just like a TV show. You got a good guy and a bad guy. And